In this video, let us outline the customs procedures and the requirements for the importing and exporting of goods. Traders in Singapore are very fortunate. They can refer to the wonderful customs website at customs.gov.sg for a wealth of information pertaining to their import or exports. Well, if you find that this information is too much to digest, you can always refer to your freight forwarders, who should be able to give some advice as well. Well, I always like to say that our customs is one of the best in the world because of its responsiveness and transparency to the trading community. Traders must remember that prior approval is required from Singapore Customs. This means you must have a permit for either the import or export of goods before you actually truck the goods into the free trade zone or out of it. So get your goods custom cleared first. When the permit has been approved, you can then proceed with the next step. These are the common documents needed when preparing cargo clearance permits via the TradeNet system. These include the exporter's commercial invoice and packing list, the bill of lading or the airway bill, licenses where applicable, and applicable certificates where relevant, and supporting documents. Approved permits are issued with a validity period. You should ensure that the permit is valid when clearing the goods. For imports of containerized cargo, the container number and the seal number are also required when applying your cargo clearance permit. This diagram depicts the customs export procedures. The declaration is submitted via TradeNet, which is the electronic data interchange system linked to customs. The submission or declaration is done by the declaring agent. This is someone who is certified to declare permits by Singapore Customs. The declaring agent or declarant can be a customs broker from your freight forwarder, a specialized person who is well versed in importing and in the declaration of import and export. And this person may also be actually a staff of the trader. If the trader has sufficient volume, it may make more sense to employ a full-time customs declarant. TradeNet is Singapore's single window system for customs declaration. It is also connected to the Network Trade Platform or NTP. The process is pretty straightforward for most exported items out of Singapore. However, if the goods exported are military goods or dual-use goods, meaning goods that are designed for commercial use but have potential military applications, then it could be subject to export controls. Well, if so, the declaration will be routed to the relevant controlling agencies, CAs in short. On approval by the letter or by the CA, a permit is granted by the SG Customs, and the exporter may authorize his or her haulier to truck the goods into the free trade zone or exit point for departure. What about the case of imports? An import refers to goods brought into customs territory from an entry point or free trade zone, or overseas goods that are brought into a free trade zone for storage and pending re-export. All goods imported into Singapore are regulated under the Customs Act, the Goods and Services Tax Act, and the Regulation of Imports and Exports Act. A customs permit is required to account for the import and the tax payment of the goods. If the goods are dutiable, then both GST and duty are both payable when these are taken out of the free trade zone for local consumption. This diagram depicts the import customs procedures. Looks pretty similar to the earlier one, except that now you are the importer. Your goods need to be custom cleared in order to be trucked out of the free trade zone. The free trade zone, of course, here refers to the port or the terminal. The declaration is submitted via TradeNet, which if you recall, is Singapore's single window system for customs clearance. The process is also straightforward for general cargo such as furniture, pots and pans, garments, footwear, etc. However, for controlled items such as food items, plants and telecommunication devices, medicines, and cosmetics, which are controlled goods, the permit or declaration will have to be routed to the relevant controlling agencies. If the item you import is dutiable, then the payment of duty must be effected through the interbank gyro. GST are also levied on goods taken out of the free trade zone. When the declaration is approved, that is when it actually officially becomes a permit, because permission has been granted. However, most of the time we always say declare the permit. Actually, it is a permit, technically speaking, only when it has been approved. The exporter will now authorize his or her haulier to truck the goods into the free trade zone or the exit point for departure upon the approval of this declaration. Sometimes traders may bring in trade samples to test the market for commercial viability. Well, it may be a relief to know that if the CIF value of your trade samples does not exceed 400 Sing dollars, then it may be imported without the need for a permit, which of course in this case means you may not need to pay GST. This, however, applies only for non-controlled trade samples, non-controlled bona fide trade samples to be exact. Bona fide means that it is genuinely trade samples and not meant for resale. Now, if the samples exceed 400 Sing dollars, GST will be incurred. In other words, you got to pay it GST, and customs in payment permit will still be needed. All controlled trade samples will also require customs permit. Supporting documents such as the invoice that says trade samples with no commercial values must be produced at entry point if required for customs verification. Since we are still on the topic of bringing things into Singapore, what about the times when you travel overseas and you bring or buy souvenirs or gifts or food products for personal use back home? Well, do note that these items may also be subject to GST on your return if they exceed the value that is granted GST relief, as shown in the table here. Relief only applies to goods for personal use. Travelers are required to pay GST only on the value of goods that exceed the GST relief. In this case, if you travel 48 hours or more, the value of goods granted GST relief is up to Sing dollars 500. And if you have traveled less than 48 hours overseas, the value of goods granted GST relief is only $100. Now, the value of the goods include the cost, insurance, and freight, that's the CIF value, plus other chargeable costs and duty payable if applicable. Travelers should declare and pay the GST for their goods at the customs tax permit if, let's say, you have brought home goods that exceed all these value. There is no GST relief for liquor, tobacco products, petroleum, and goods imported for commercial purposes. So they must be genuinely for your personal consumption only, for individual hand-carried goods. Holders of work permit, employment pass, student pass, dependent pass, or long-term pass issued by the Singapore government and crew members are not eligible for GST relief. Do note that non-compliance with customs rules and legislations is an offence that may lead to severe prosecution. In a rather recent case, a woman was fined severely for failing to declare the GST on goods that are worth $11,710, even though these are genuine products and not fake. Had these products been fake, then she would also be subject to severe penalties, fines for importing counterfeit products. The idea here is that all goods that are imported will be subject to GST. So she needs to pay for them rather than not declaring the GST at all. The next unit will look at TradeNet, the Singapore single window for customs declaration.